Hi, my name is Sarah Byrn Rickman, and I'm an author and I'm also a pilot. I write about the women who flew in World War II. They flew for the U.S. Army, mostly ferrying airplanes from one place to another. Betty Gillies' WAFS Pilot, The Days and Flights of a World War II Squadron Leader, is my third book to win a finalist award with the Colorado Authors League, and I would like to read from it for you. Chapter 1, On Wings of Gold. The sun creased the horizon. Suspended in the bubble-enclosed cockpit of the twin-engine, twin-tailed P-38 Lightning, the pilot pressed her toes hard against the brakes. The aircraft trembled, ready to fly. Eyes focused on the instrument panel, she watched the dials and gauges that would tell her when the engine reached full takeoff power. It was still dark and smoggy, a typical morning in Long Beach with dense, low-hanging clouds. I couldn't see very well, but when the control tower said go, I went. She lifted her toes from the brakes and shoved the throttles to full power, pouring the coals to the engines. The surge held her against the seat as the Lightning's wheels rolled faster, 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 gaining momentum. A wind caught beneath the wings and lifted the silver aircraft from the runway. A swirling brownish murk engulfed the plane. The ground vanished. Now flying blind, she kept her eyes on the instruments in front of her, her left hand on the throttles. Her right hand held the controls that determined the aircraft's upward movement. The silver plane climbed through the darkness. At 900 feet, the airplane burst through into a cloudless blue sky. Excuse me. The sun's rays hit my silver wings and turned them to gold. I wanted to pull something and stop right there in the air. Below was fog and black stuff. Directly in front of me were these two snow-covered peaks, well over 10,000 feet, the sun coming up through the pass between them. And above it all was the sleek airplane flying on wings of gold. The pilot of that United States warplane was 35-year-old Betty Gillies. Her destination was the shipping docks at Newark, New Jersey. Flying during daylight only, the trip from the Pacific coast to Atlantic coast took 2 days if the weather cooperated. When she landed, Betty taxied the aircraft to her assigned spot, cut the power, and checked that all the dials, gauges, and switches were turned off. The ground crew took over, removed and stored the wings separately, and prepared the Lightning to be hoisted aboard the waiting Liberty ship, a wartime cargo vessel that would take it to England. From there, the P-38 was destined to fly in the World War II battles fought to free Europe from the dominance of Nazi Germany. Betty climbed down from the cockpit. Carrying her parachute and briefcase, she headed for the operations office. A Red Cross shuttle bus took her across the Hudson River to New York, where she caught a train to Wilmington, Delaware. Betty commanded the squadron of women pilots stationed at Newcastle Army Air Base in Wilmington. At her desk back on base, she awaited her next assignment. Who was Betty Gillies? In a time when women seldom worked outside the home, why did a woman happen to be in the cockpit of a U.S. warplane? I took up flying for one of the oldest reasons known to womanhood, Betty Gillies said, to catch my man. In 1928, 20-year-old Betty Hyler entered nurses training at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. Flying airplanes was not in her plans until she met Brewster Allison Bud Gillies. I was head over heels in love, but Bud was a Navy pilot. Most of their dates were in the company of his Navy buddies. All they talked about was flying. I decided that if I wanted to be with him, I had to be able to speak the language. Betty shared this predicament with a friend, who handed her a copy of Cosmopolitan magazine. "Here, read this," she said. In the magazine was the article, "You Too Can Fly," written by the famous American aviatrix Amelia Earhart. Betty signed up for half-hour flying lessons at Roosevelt Field on Long Island. The drive between the classes at the hospital and the airport was approximately 30 miles. Her first lesson was on November 10th, 1928. She flew an OX-5 Travel Air, a popular 1920s flight training aircraft. At that time, I was working in the children's ward, Betty said. I was so enthusiastic about flying. The kids got interested as well. When I got back from a lesson, they asked, "How do you do it? What kind of control do you have?" I'd tell them there was this control stick between your knees. You push it forward if you want to go down. You pull back on it if you want to go up. Every afternoon, I went flying again with the kids in the children's ward. 7 hours and 35 minutes of flight later, on December 23rd, Betty soloed the OX-5. In those days, we needed only 10 hours of solo for a private license. They didn't have so much to teach us back then. I was able to get my private license on May 6, 1929. By then, I had a total of 22 hours and 15 minutes. She was hooked.